Promote your brand here at Viral Hip Hop News. Email me, samant@vhiphopnews.com. No, wait, let's go.
So, now, you were one of the first brothers to come out, in my opinion, when this whole mental health and brothers getting mental health, when that started really gaining popularity. I remember vividly from the Book of Ryan, you kind of just giving you and talking about your mental health and bearing your truth. And one of your lines that really caught on to me was, "I'm writing all these bars of madness, remembering," or I forgot what it went. You said, "Getting to all my childhood scars and sadness." I think it was on one of your interludes, and it kind of really stuck with me because you see what hip hop's going through now. Even with Quando Rondo, we've seen his young cousin get shot, and his emotions is pouring out right there in front of everybody to see, and then they're making TikTok challenges about it. Like, this shit is kind of weird on how hip hop and then the youth is absorbing hip hop and how it all is kind of acting out in front of us like a video game. And it all kind of alludes to what we're going through as men, as young black men, as older black men, all around. How do you feel about the current state of hip hop as it pertains to the youth? All the violence we see in the RICO charge. How do you feel about it as a whole with our youngsters and what they're going through?
Well, I hate the fact that it's so violent, but it's always been violent.
Yeah.
It's always been violent, and now everything is just kind of playing out in front of our eyes. But young black men, and especially grown black men too, we're not allowed to be emotional. We're not allowed to show emotion. We're not allowed to cry. We're not allowed to feel anything. All of us have to be dominant alpha males, and everything that's considered cool from the environments that we come from is some souped up masculine shit. Souped up toxic masculine shit. You know what I'm saying? Some tough guy shit. Tough guy shit is like cool. You can't be vulnerable. You can't show emotion. And when you taught that growing up, especially if you don't have like a father or somebody that you could speak to about some of the things that you feel, and you don't learn how to unpack your feelings, like you don't learn how to articulate how you feel about things, that turns into you and your brain automatically as like a reflex, masking and suppressing feelings. And that happened to me at such an early age. I remember being at my grandma's funeral and not being able to cry. I wanted to cry. I was trying to cry and couldn't find it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, by the time I got to therapy, when I decided to get sober, man, I talked to my therapist. I was talking to that man for probably an hour before I was in tears.
Okay.
Wow.
And he was actually, all he did was ask me a few questions about my dad. He asked me a couple questions. I just started kind of talking about our relationship. Next thing you know, I'm in tears. And me and my dad always been good. My dad is one of my idols. You know what I'm saying? But my dad is also the cause of a lot of my trauma. You know what I mean? So when you don't address it and you don't step to it, the shit is gonna come out regardless. It's gonna come out.
Right.
And it wasn't until therapy that I learned the importance of being able to express yourself like that and being able to get that shit off you. That shit felt like a weight off my shoulders. You know what I mean? So I mean, don't get me wrong. I still don't have the courage to just be around just crying about everything. You know what I mean? Because I associate that shit with courage now, man. I had to text Hitmaker the other day after I saw his interview on Math Office Show. And I just was like, look, man, you know, it's funny, like the street guy who never has taken any L's, who looks like he's virtually bulletproof, is pretty much what we subscribe to and what we are intrigued at the idea of. We are intrigued at the idea of such a thing. You know what I mean? Like, to us, that's like the most magnificent thing that we can see on our TV and on our computer screens, that we kind of like colloquialize. You know what I'm saying? Like, we look at that shit like it's like, because we know that's not none of us. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wish I could look myself in the mirror and say I never took any L's. You know what I'm saying? Like, I took plenty of L's. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like what we associate with strength. So I told him to have the strength to be that vulnerable, and then also have dialogue of things that you've done that are so redeeming from things that are deemed as so demeaning. You a man today. You strong today. You know what I mean? Just like Marshall told me when I called him and told him that I'm ready to stop drinking and I can't do it by myself. He said, Royce, that's the realest thing you ever told me. And you probably think that you at your weakest right now because you are powerless over something. But if you strong enough finally to admit that you're powerless over something, now you strong. You know what I mean? So it's like we don't express vulnerability because we're afraid to, not because we're not vulnerable. Everybody is vulnerable. Every human being, especially black men. You know what I mean? And I think that vulnerability, it resonates very well with us, but we just don't make that the topic of discussion. We love to see people evolve. You know, it seems like people want you to stay the same and they enjoy watching you kill yourself. But it's nothing more enjoyable than watching you redeem that shit, man. Could you imagine if Jay-Z was still talking about being a drug dealer
Right.
at 50 years old? It wouldn't even translate the same.
Right.
He needed to evolve. And that's why we love the nigga so much. We don't even love him as a drug dealer no more. We love the fact that he came out of that shit. So it's a way. But then, you know, on the flip side to that, there are some rappers who glorify. But not every rapper talking about that shit is glorifying it.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? So there's a lot going on. To answer your question, there's a lot going on in the culture at the same time, and a lot of it just needs to be kind of disentangled. And I think a lot of it are actually separate conversations that need to be had, and some of them don't need to be had anywhere near the same time because it's too easy to conflate.
Right.
Real talk. Kind of piggybacking off that a little bit. I heard you talk about in the interview that you just got tired of being drunk all the time. You 9 years sober now. Do you think, you know, the alcoholism was a result of some of those childhood traumas that you say you went through with your father?
Absolutely. But it's not always easy for me to talk about my alcoholism correlating to a lot of the trauma that I experienced because people who haven't been to therapy and who may not necessarily understand it, I don't know if it's the way that I articulate it or if I'm not that good at articulating it yet, but I never wanted to come off as a justification.
Got you.
You know, because one of the main components of sobriety and taking the steps and getting better and looking to evolve at all times is accountability. You know, like, so I'm always trying to find out how can I hold myself accountable? What role did I play in anything that's wrong? I don't care what it is. Anything that happens, I know it didn't just happen. You know what I mean? Like everybody played their role. But now the flip side to that is understanding not to put everything on myself. You know, because up until that point, I put everything on myself. I put the way that I did in school, I put that on myself. You know what I mean? Like what happened with my brother when my brother went to jail at an early age, I put that on my brother. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have the wherewithal to be able to say, okay, maybe that was a trauma response from the trauma we experienced with my dad and my brother's need. He felt the need to protect me at all times. So he had an emotional reaction to somebody that I had a fight with that I didn't even need help. And he cut the guy with a knife. He ran to his car and cut the guy with a knife and he got arrested at an early age. And once he got into that system, he was in and out of jail all the way into damn near his 40s. So at this point, he's institutionalized. And that shit caused a lot of division between me and him. It drove a wedge between me and his relationship because he went this way, I went that way. So by the time we met back up, it wasn't the same as when we were kids. And that's some disheartening shit. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like life kind of works that way, you know, but when you can look at these scenarios and you can kind of put this here, put that there. Okay, this could have been because of that. This, and then you start learning that everything is for a reason. You know, nothing is just by chance. Shit don't just be happening. Everything correlates to something. And when you can kind of break that down like that and identify with that, you can let things go. You know what I mean? Like you cannot have things just weighing on you all the time. You know what I mean? You can let go of some of the guilt that you may have been harboring. You ever seen somebody at a funeral blaming themselves for somebody else's death? And then somebody telling them you can't blame yourself. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like if you can unpack things, if you can unpack things and you can identify certain components of a situation, then it makes it a little bit easier for you to be able to accept certain things, because a lot of this shit is just about acceptance. I accepted the fact that my father wasn't perfect. I accepted the fact that he did the best that he could do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like with what he had, he was a 20-year-old parent with a cocaine addiction. You know, my mother and father were fucking kids, man. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like there's plenty of room for error. There's gonna be mistakes made, and they made them. But the thing about me is looking at that in retrospect is my parents' positives by far outweigh their negatives. To me, that's them doing a great job. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
How easy was it to find a therapist? Because I know, like, to find it, I don't know if it may be easier or harder to talk to somebody that you don't know. Because that's my cousin. I've known him my entire life, as close as brothers could be. But we don't share shit like as deep as we could to a therapist. You know what I'm saying? So, is it easier to talk to a therapist? How easy was it to find the right therapist? Like, talk about that experience.
well, with me, I went to the guy that Marshall put me with.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So my first experience with trying to find a therapist that I kind of like felt like that I needed to talk to a certain kind of therapist. I remember I was doing like a room. I was moderating, or I was doing some type of panel, or I was doing something with a bunch of like mental health people. Um, and there was a therapist named Spirit. Her name is Spirit. She's a black lady, and she got to breaking stuff down, man. And I just fell in love with the way that she thinks and the way that she speaks, and the way that she was kind of like standing up for young black men, and just like she was able to break things down in layman's terms and without having to use a whole lot of words.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just slick with it, bro. It was like when I heard Jay-Z for the first time. You know what I'm saying? Like when I heard Reasonable Doubt. You know what I mean? Like listening to her talk, that's how I felt. So I reached out to her, and I talked to her a couple times. So I mean, I guess I would equate it to like finding a good barber. You know what I mean? Like it's not really hard. It's not really hard. They're around, and it's just about finding the ones that work best with you.
Right.
Like there's plenty of barbers out there who can do the kind of haircut that you want. Well, maybe all of them might not have the type of personality that you're looking for. You know what I mean? So you may have to go to a few of them to find the right fit. You know, it may be a location that you prefer. You know what I mean? Like it could be anything. But you're gonna go in there and you're gonna start talking. But really, the best shit is gonna happen when you are able to relax and just kind of let your inhibitions go. And that may come with time. It just depends on the person and how well they can adjust to just talking to somebody, because ultimately whoever it is going to be somebody you don't know anyway.
Or
You know what I mean? So
mm-hmm.
I mean, if that's a problematic thing for you, then that's all the more reason why you got, because you don't do that when you're looking for a job. You
Right.
don't say, yo, I don't want to go to this interview because I don't know the person who I'm doing the interview with. Well, yeah, but you want to get some money, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you got to look at your mental health in the same kind of realm. You know what I mean? Like this is for you. This is for you to get better. But it's it's stigmatized in our community that the first thing we do is think of a bunch of reasons why we shouldn't go.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's paralyzing. You know what I mean? Like the paralysis of analysis. You can sit and analyze that, and years will go by. But it's until you decide, like, yo, man, this is something that's important, which unfortunately we don't know how important it is in our community, because it's never been a community that has been readily available to us.
Right.
So we usually wait until there's something wrong, or court ordered or something like that. But we all need to talk to somebody. It's not just when you feel like you crazy, or something happened and you're losing your mind, or it's nothing like that, bro. It's like Therapy is something. Therapy is like a workout, bro. It's like going to the gym. That's how it should be viewed in our community. It should
Wow.
just go having somebody. Look how all of these audio chat apps and shit have like taken off during the pandemic. It's
Mhm.
just audio.
Yeah.
It's just people in there. It's just people in there talking, bro.
Yeah.
That's all it is. These people didn't realize how much they needed to be able to do that until they had that app there. And that's all the therapy is. People are on there just spilling everything, bro.
Mhm.
People, the first thing they say is, I don't usually do this, this internet shit. This ain't what I do, but I'm about to go in here and do everything that everybody else be. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to get that shit off you, bro. You got to get it off you.
Definitely.